right, so now that we understand about method, let's talk about return types. We see here, so let's look at how the method is constructed per se, the syntax of method. So we have public, okay, we'll talk more about public and all that at a later time. With public, static, void, and then the name of the method. And depending whether we have a parameter, we're passing in some data, all right? We'll have the type of data always. It's important to remember that. Always start with the type and then the name of the variable, in this case, right? Parameter. Now let's talk about return type. Well, a return type tells the system, tells Java, tells the compiler that the method we're talking about, whether it's going to return something, right? So we should expect something being returned from it or not. So when you say void, right, this keyword void means that the method in question is not going to return anything. There are times when we need to return, say, an integer. Return an integer. In this case, let's take the example that we have here, which is the add nums, right? So it's a method that adds two numbers and then shows the result. So this works fine, as we saw earlier, systeming out the sum of these two integers that we pass in, as we see here. So add numbers, pass in 4 and 5, and we get 9, okay? But this method is still a void method, which means it really doesn't return anything. In order for us to make this method return something, because look, all this method needs to do is literally just take two numbers, whatever we pass in here, and add them, and then just return the result. So what do we need to do here? We need to do a few things. First of all, we have to change the signature type, which means we need to tell the system, the compiler, that hey, this method here is not just void. This method will and should, it's a contract, return an integer. In this case, that's what we need. So we're going to say here int. Now we have a problem here. If you have it over here, it says missing return type. Well, because it turns out if you say that you want to change this method to have a return, to return something, well, you better have an actual return statement here. Well, return, you just say return, and what are we going to return? We can say return A plus B. It's a statement, just close like that. Let's go and comment that out. Let's say something you probably haven't seen it. Okay, this may look very confusing. What are we doing here? Essentially, we're saying, well, it would have been the same if we had said something like this. Int result is equal to 0. Okay, and then we say result is going to be equal to A plus B. And then we just take that result and we pass and we return like that. It's the same thing as doing A plus B. Let's just keep the way it is right now. Let's save this. Now check this out. If we save and run, nothing's going to happen. And you may say, well, but we called it here. So it's add numbers, and there it is. And we have the result, but why isn't it showing? Well, the reason it's not showing, remember, is that now we've changed things. First of all, we did comment out the system.out because now we're just returning the result, the integer, because again, we remember the moment you say int as a type, then you have to return an integer. That's why we have here int result, and we initialize it to 0. Or we could just not have anything, but I like always to initialize it, okay? Either way. So now we know that int is going to be, result is going to be an integer, which is exactly what we need. So we are putting the addition, the sum of A plus B, which is exactly what we have passed here. So the sum is going to be into the result here variable, and then we're returning it. Okay. Now, the reason why, again, going back, the reason why we're not seeing anything in our console here is because, well, we have to system it out, because now what's happening, we are just returning the value. We're not systeming it out. We're not showing it. The value is there. It's just that we're not showing. The beauty here, we can actually now go ahead and say system.out.println, and we can just pass this whole thing here inside here. Save this and run. Should have 9. And you may think, oh man, this is awesome, this is great. And it is amazing because now you notice this whole thing here, it's returning the result. Which also means we could have done the following. We could have said, for instance, int final result is equal to add nums and pass in 4 and 5. Something like that. And then take this final result and just put it here. And run, we'll get the same result. You notice now we have this whole flexibility thing that we didn't have before. Because now we can literally, knowing that the add nums is returning an integer, we could even go ahead here and say, check this out, say plus 10, because this is all an integer, right? That's what we said here. It's returning a plus b, which is coincidentally is an integer. Now we can actually take this whole result and add 10. If you save this, look what's going to happen. 19. Yes, because 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 10 is 19. We can keep adding. 45, save, and there we go, and so forth. Okay? So that's very helpful when we started to compartmentalize our code. Get rid of that. Save that. All right? Now, the same way we have this return an integer, right? The signature is an integer here. Well, the type of this method is an integer. We could do the same, obviously, you've seen that before. We can do the same with strings.